Good evening, everyone. This is Gil at Camppatton Family Compound. With me tonight, we have Tammy at Rebel Canners. Mark is not here tonight. For the Monday Night Fireside Chat, tonight's topic is, we have a very special guest, Pascal Baudar. And before we bring him up, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. And let's see what we got here on the side chat. See who all's in here so far. We got right now, my number up here at the top here says 23 watching. So we have Diana in on both sides. Crew 1351 is here. Geeky Gardens here from Florida. And Mad Chick Acres. Mark is here. Mark is watching on Tammy's side. And we got a bunch of others just lurking. And for those that are lurking or just whatever you want to call it, listening is fine. Just say hi and I froze. Software issue there. All right, so and Caitlin Strain's in the house now. So let's bring up our guest up here. There he is. And I'm going to swap us around a little bit. So come on, swap. There we go. I'm at the bottom and Tammy's muted. Still.
Self-inflicted.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to sit down here and hunt trolls that come in the comment section, kind of cause a problem. And I will, I'll keep an eye out for questions and stuff for you guys. So, Tammy, take it away.
So, you're in my Facebook group, and two of them, both Rebel Canners and Rebel Fermenters. And I love your posts. They just, I think I know something, and then you post something, I'm like, oh, I never thought to do it that way. Or, oh, that is so interesting. Like, and I eat about 25% of my diet is stuff I forage. How much of your diet is stuff you forage? I'm curious. Because you do so
Same
much.
Thing. No, same
How much?
Thing.
About 20. Okay.
20 to 25. And one of the main reasons is I forage a lot for my classes.
Okay.
So I could do it full time. I mean, I could do it 100%, but it's just that, it is time consuming, and a lot of the wild food that I actually forage goes into my class. And I actually make a living giving classes during the weekend.
Okay. I wish I lived closer. I wish I lived closer.
Yeah.
If you have not checked out his books, you really need to check out his books.
Here's two of them.
I am, yeah.
There's the other two and the third one. I mean, the fifth one. There's the fifth one.
Yeah. So I am fascinated about the grains you forage, because that's not something that I've ever done here in Michigan. And then I looked into some of the things you were posting. I'm like, oh, we do have that. Maybe I could do that.
Yeah. It's interesting. The book, I need to really, so my last book about seeds and grains, I really need to educate people, because I noticed the sales is actually not as much as the other book. And one of the big reasons is really education. Even for foraging, people who are really experienced as foragers still don't think that seeds and grains is actually difficult to collect or difficult to extract. One of the main problems really with wild seeds and grains is extraction, and I spend a lot of time on the book. I think I have probably like 15 different methods of extraction, but I'm at a point where I could go foraging in the morning, and by the end of the day, I'm making bread. Easy.
Ooh.
And I can give you a good example. Let me see. I have it right there if you don't mind. I like to move in and out.
Oh, keep moving. It's all right.
This is a good example. I collected this bag, and those are wild oats. We have a lot of wild oats showing up all over the place. They're invasive. I'm in California. They're actually invasive in California. And those are the most difficult grain to extract. You have to be insane trying to do it, although I'm insane. But you have to be insane. It's like trying to do it. It's it's a tiny grain that's kind of like furry, and it's kind of like stuck inside that, stuck inside that little fur. And if I try to extract it by hand, it will take me maybe like literally like 30 seconds to do it by hand. So trying to extract it, go like, oh my God, this is totally not worth it. But there are actually two methods that our ancestors would have used. One of the methods, if you see it, it's mostly chaff. There's a lot of pepper and kind of like pepper type material. And in the old days, what our ancestors would have done is literally to set the whole thing on fire while the grain was still green. So it would have burned everything, all the chaff, and keep the grain intact. Or kind of like roasted grain,
Yeah.
But my favorite method, which I explain in the book, which was completely groundbreaking for me, is you can actually take a food processor and use that to actually remove the chaff from the grain. And I'll give you a good example. I'm using a Vitamix on my side. And what I like about the Vitamix is they have a square blade, so it doesn't cut into the grain. And I took a handful, stick it into my Vitamix, and then I put it on low speed, and I just move away for 15 minutes. I go do something else. I come back, and I basically have my grain completely separate from the chaff. And so I do nothing, and I end up with those grains.
Oh, wow.
So I'm telling you, so I have nothing to do. It will take me 1 hour to collect enough to actually make a small bread if I wanted to. And then maybe another hour of processing in a Vitamix, but then I have nothing to do. I just put it on low speed and I just blow on it to remove the chaff. And then you end up with all those grains. So it's really an education. A lot of people don't understand how easy it can be and how plentiful they are. It's pretty much all around us, because every plant that is edible will go to seeds at one point, and you can collect those seeds or those grains and use them for food.
One of the first things I was ever taught to forage was actually mustard seed, wild mustard.
There you go.
And it has the grain.
I make my own Dijon. I'll show you. This is a good one right there. Let me see. Where are you? Okay. So this is my well-crafted forage mustard.
Ooh.
So Dijon mustard, and I use my own vinegar that I make from scratch, and I use also a little bit of the wine elderberry wine that I make. So it's 100% completely forage. It's really good, by the way. This is. I could do a business selling stuff on the side. It's so good. It's like crack. I'm telling you, like people get addicted to it. They call you and say, "Hey, you got some of this stuff?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I don't tend to share my forage food as much because it takes so much work to get there, like to get it. I have to travel to, to certain spots that are not near me, and then, go home with my bounty.
It's a lifestyle. I mean, if you really want to be serious about it, it becomes a lifestyle. And I'm very lucky because I kind of found a way to make a living doing that lifestyle. But it's, what people forget is this is really the way our ancestors used to live. And right now we really stuck in the reason you cannot, or most people cannot do it is because they have a job, 9 to 5. But if you go back in time, your job from 9 to 5 was really just collecting food and preparing the food. Most of the time was collecting food and preparing the food, or fixing stuff around the house, or building the house, or whatever. But collecting food was really one of the main thing you were doing, and it doesn't take that much time if you think about it.
I often do it like where I'm traveling, like I'm out in the woods a lot or walking, right. And I'm always on the lookout, and then I'm stuff in my pockets. My kids kind of call me like I'm a squirrel when I go on long walks, but I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is edible, and I'm sticking it
Yeah.
in my pocket and
Yeah.
taking it home and drying it, or you
Yeah.
know, doing something to it. And elderberries, the first year I harvested elderberries, I did it by the 5-gallon buckets full.
There you go.
And I made 147 pints of elderberry jam.
There you go.
You know,
No,
and it's just now my favorite thing is red bud jelly. I spotted a red bud tree today in bloom, and I'm like, I was traveling way far south, 1.5 hours
Yeah.
south of where I live, and I'm like, do you
Yeah.
think those people would mind if I went in their yard, picked all the flowers off their tree? Probably. Can't do that. But I'm always like looking wherever I'm
Yeah.
at. And our ancestors, I think they did that. They weren't as pinned down to one house or one spot. And as they traveled, they used the resources around them. So
Yeah. And you don't have to do everything all at once. It's like I like to do at least 1 hour a day. 1 hour a day where I go out and pick up stuff. But for example, with everything that's going on in the world, I decided to go a little bit like starting to gather more for survival a little bit, just in case of an emergency. And I collected, just spending an hour a day, I collected so far 100 pounds of acorn.
oh,
So
I haven't made acorn flour. I need to do that.
Oh my God, it's so good and it's so easy to do. I have I basically store the acorn and I do it whenever I need to. But for my
Okay.
class, I always make acorn bread every week. I make acorn bread, so I keep using it and using it. But I got to tell you, a lot of people say, okay, in survival situation, you need like the basic would be like rice and beans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can skip that and go to acorn. Acorn have enough protein and enough fat. If you think about it, this was the food of native people locally. And the main source of food, and everything else was kind of a bonus. If you think about it, you have so much nutrition, inside those. It's really a forgotten food. It's so easy to do, and it is extremely plentiful in some areas.
Oh yes, it's very plentiful here.
Yeah.
And like there's some acorns that have less tannins in them.
Yeah.
And you just have to kind of know your acorns. So I've studied it. I know my trees, but I just haven't made the flour yet. A couple times I gathered the acorns and then I didn't get around to making the flour. And then got busy.
The rule I have in California, I don't know if it's applicable to your area, but in California, is the smaller the acorn, the more bitter they are.
Oh, okay.
And the bigger the acorn, the less bitter they are. So my acorn, the one that I collect in the mountain, and I think they're in storage outside, but they're really big. They're really, really big. And it only takes me 4 days of leaching and I'm done.
Do you cold leach or do you do?
I do both.
Do both? Okay.
I do both. I like to do cold leaching because it's more sticky when I make bread.
Okay.
But to be honest, like hot leaching is actually more flavorful. It's more nutty. You get more, it tastes a little bit better.
Okay.
So I do both. It really depends what the use is.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of one of the reasons why I haven't done it. I've been kind of stuck on which method to try. All right. So now I got to do both. Got it.
And I really like to incorporate it in all kind of different stuff, not just making bread. People say, okay, you're going to make porridge, you're going to make bread. But like if I do, for example, meatballs, I'm going to be using my acorn bread crumbs, for example. So I end up having, if I make my sausage, same thing. So it's kind of versatile. And once you can totally use it in all kind of different ways.
Your recipe you just posted in my group is very plentiful here right now. Cattails. And you were making a cattail slaw, was it? Or a
sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is absolutely delicious. It makes the flavor of cattail is kind of like a nutty cucumber. And so there is 2 ways to do it. You can actually completely ferment I don't use cattle only, so it's kind of like the ratio. I like to use a ratio of like 30% cattle to 70% cabbage. If you do like 100% cattle, it's too much. It gets gooey a little bit, like mucilaginous. But so you can totally ferment like I did. This was like 20 or 30, I forgot the recipe, 20 or 40% even sauerkraut, cabbage, and then the rest was cattle. But if you want the best flavor, is you're going to use an already fermented sauerkraut, and then you add 20% cattle to it.
Oh, okay.
After the fermentation.
So I work at a nature center part-time, and I get to give tours to kids. And one of the things I always talk to the kids about is how cattail is the supermarket of the swamp. And if you get lost and you can only name one plant,
right,
the one plant every one of them should know is the cattail. It'll save their life. And so I would love to make some of that and see if I can get the kids to eat it, because I think they would like that. I've made pickled cattail before, shoots.
Yeah.
But I think some of them might like that better.
Yeah, so if I was you, I would do a sauerkraut first, and then just add the cattail to it. And if you do it that way, you actually get more flavor. And I think it's because the cattail doesn't go through the whole fermentation process, which can alter the flavor a little bit. It will ferment anyway. It will definitely ferment because it's already acidic. It's food safe anyway. You know, so adding like 20% cattail, you really get the nutty flavor. Really nice.
Okay, I'm gonna make some of that for my.
Yeah, you should try it. It's interesting. I really like it.
So, what's the most unusual thing you've foraged and eaten?
Oh, my favorite one. It's an odd one. It's a type of sugar. Okay. And it's a type of sugar that comes from insects.
Oh.
Let me go grab some. I have a whole pantry over there. This is it right there.
Okay.
So I know this. So it's so in California we have a lot of eucalyptus.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when they're not native, they come from Australia. And when they brought the tree from Australia, and I think originally they wanted to do it for construction, and they figured out it sucks. But you know, we have a lot. They kind of became invasive. But when they imported the eucalyptus, they also imported a little fly. And what that little fly does, it will actually deposit little eggs on the leaf of the eucalyptus, and then you have a little baby insect or grub, some kind of tiny larvae, that sucks the juice of the eucalyptus and then create a house around them made of sugar. So let me see. I may have a photo of it in one of my books. Let me see. I may not have one. I don't know. Sometimes I have like so many books, I forget what I put in it.
I feel your pain on that one.
I know. And I use my book a lot. That's for sure.
That's why I just wrote a book with all the recipes in it.
Because I forget my own recipes, so I have to go back. There you go. So that's how it looks like.
Oh, okay.
So the white stuff is actually made of sugar. And it's absolutely delicious. It's crunchy. When you dehydrate it, it becomes crunchy. And you can see those are really in a little house. It takes a long time to collect, but it's such an unusual ingredient. I really don't mind doing it. And it tastes like honey. So it's a type of honeydew. Okay. And it's a wonder, you know, because I do a lot of cooking stuff during my classes, incredible on dessert. So you can do an ice cream and put that on top. I do a dessert where we use like pears, fermented pears, and then we put some pine cone syrup, and then we put some of the lerp on top. So it's kind of like it's something that is completely unwanted by anybody. It's completely invasive, and then you kind of turn it into gourmet food, and I like to do that. I like to really, one of the things I do as a forager is also I really want foraging to actually help the environment. And living in California, I gotta tell you, we're like surrounded by so many non-native and invasive plants. And locally, there is no positive solution on it. The only solution that exists are really either you're going to do habitat restoration, that means you're going to go there and just grab the stuff and throw it away, or you're going to be spraying herbicide.
Oh no!
So what I'm trying to do is to educate people and say, hey, we have like 16 types of different mustard, for example. They're all invasive. We only have one native, but every single one is a crop in different country. So why don't we, instead of doing food waste or disturbing the environment, why don't we find a way to eat the stuff? And that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is to educate people on how to eat and turn those invasive plants into gourmet food, And a good example will be making your own Dijon mustard out of the invasive black mustard, for example.
Yes.
So I see, by the way, I see a lot of the comments. If people have questions, like, in terms of the book I recommend for beginning forager, it really depends where you live. My books are not about foraging plant. Like identifying the plant. My books are what you can do with them. So depending on where you live, for example, if you live in California, there's a good book called Foraging California. What I will advise you to do is go on Amazon and kind of like take a look at your area where you live. So if you live in Michigan or whatever, look for Foraging Michigan and see what book exists. And there are so many books now about foraging. Is for whatever reason, it's kind of trendy right now. So you will definitely find book, and you look at the review, and I will tell you the one that you can get, probably, But my books are really more about, once and you can identify a plant, what the hell can you do with it? And
I'm going to bring your books back up again here.
Yeah, sure. So you can turn them into vinegar. The only one that I did about plant identification was actually the seeds and grains. Why? Because there is no book on the subject. Well-crafted fermentation is about lacto fermentation, like sauerkraut and kimchi, and making cheese, by the way, too. We can talk about that. And then the well-crafting brewer is all about the boozy concoction, making beer, making wine, all kind of different things like that.
Yeah, the fermentation one, I think piqued a lot of people's interest when I showed it up last week as a sneak peek.
Right.
And so, because I know that a lot of people talk about on homesteading channels about fermenting and stuff. And so that's probably one that if anyone in the side would know, would be more interested in that or the brewing one. That's why I put these two on the same page.
Yeah. But it's interesting, like if you're really serious about fermentation, about food, about foraging, I'm gonna tell you a nice story. In 2006, after I spent many years studying the landscape here in California, I decided to do an experiment. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do a whole year living on wild food only. And if you want to make money, by the way, you can totally do that as a weight loss program and advertise it as a weight loss program. It was fascinating experience because it was a serious mistake. Like, I really realized that, I still had a lot to learn, but I thought I knew everything at the time. Apparently not. But one thing I learned for sure, doing all this stuff, one thing I learned is that if you're really serious about food preservation, about wild food, it's really about food preservation. So, for example, in California, springtime and summertime, fantastic. We have a lot of green and we have plants everywhere, But then comes end of summer and fall and winter, everything turns into a desert.
Yep.
And then if you live in a different state, everything turns to snow. So what you're going to be foraging, you can make yellow snow beer, yellow snow mead, yellow snow oak, and different stuff, But so I really realized that if I really wanted to survive on it and really be serious about it, it's really about food preservation. And then I really started to study all the traditional food preservation technique, and also did the Master Food Preserver program. So I basically study also like all the modern aspect of food preservation technique. And then what I did is starting to apply all those traditional methods to wild food. And that's kind of like became my niche at the time. Not a lot of people were doing that. And I started to really go really deep into finding a way of preserving this wild food that I was collecting all the time, And lacto fermentation was a good example, You can make your own kimchi, and this is a good example. That's a kimchi made with wild mustard, but you can see I even use grains in it. So I mix my own grains and seeds, because it's a fantastic use. Fermentation and grains go really well together. Mustard leaves, this is our most invasive mustard. And there you go. So this is from beginning of the year. That's like 4 months ago. This is lacto fermented, and it will keep forever. It's super acidic. I can still eat it 3 years later. I'm not stuck with fermentation. I mean, I'm gonna be using like whatever. I calculated. I did a whole list of the food preservation technique I use. I have 50 of them. 50 of them. And that will also include canning, by the way. So I do high pressure canning. A good example would be this one right there. Those are pressure canned radish pods.
Ooh.
So why not? You have all those radish pods, you need to preserve them. So I have like 40 jars of it. And this is pickled black walnuts. It's an old recipe from the 1700s. It's one of my favorites. It tastes like Worcestershire sauce. And this will be water bath canning. And it's made of local wild walnuts. So yeah, I mean, all the techniques are good. Like from traditional to modern, I don't care. If it works, I will totally use them, But making beer, making wine, for example, I wrote a whole book about, alcoholic fermentation. Here's a good example. This is one of my beer that's actually fermenting right now. And this one is my mugwort beer. So this is based on ingredients that the Celt and Viking were using in Europe. And people are completely nuts about that one. It is so good. It tastes like a beer. It's kind of like, if you think about it, mugwort is kind of like the ancestor of hops. Hops showed up in the year 900 in Europe. There was no mention of hops before the year 900. But believe me, people used to make beer. So what were they using? So they were using all kind of different plants like that with a bitter, like very aromatic or with a bitter edge. So yarrow would have been a good example, If you make, guess what? So if you can make beer and you can make wine, then you can turn them into vinegar. And here's a good example. One of my vinegar growing right now. This is my elderberry wine vinegar. And I need to bottle it because, my God, look at this mother. It's so big. Yeah. And then once you make vinegar, well, guess what? You can preserve your own food. You can start pickling and you can do all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah.
But studying modern food preservation was also helping. Like, when I do my vinegar, I really try to get at least 5% acidity, for example. And I explained that in the book. How can you make it simple, but get 5% acidity so that the preserve that you do is actually food safe? And it's important for me because I do so many
My
classes.
mother taught me.
Yeah.
My mother taught me the secret because my grandparents had an apple orchard. and they made a lot of vinegar with the leftover. One of my first things was picking up all the fallen apples, and we used it to make apple cider that we made into apple vinegar. And when the mother sinks in the jar, then she says that it's okay to use for preserving because it'll be at least 5% once the mother starts to sink. So she said she always said to look at the mother and see where the mother was in your jar, and then you know the acidity.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
You might want to try that. I've never used my own vinegar for that because I make such small quantities of it, and I use so much vinegar for canning and processing. So like my vinegar goes into salad dressings. It goes into so many other things. It's used as more of a flavoring than it is for a food preservation thing, you know. But I'm buying apple cider vinegar right and left and making it. I make it, but that is so much better tasting than the stuff I buy at the store that I don't want to use it for my pickling. I want to use it for those things I need flavoring in.
Oh, I agree with you. This is so good, you know. So I see like a bunch of question there. I don't know what CHQD Zuber. I don't know who that is.
I think that was Kaylin's on a phone. I think that's supposed to be Chad something or other.
Yeah, no, Chad.
He was supposed to be E.
Yeah, not sure who that is. You know, instead of food, in terms of food failure, that's so interesting. So the failure were never about food. I would say like spoiling or anything like that. It was mostly about flavor and texture. So if you apply the right method, by the way, and it works, wild food is like regular food. If it works with regular food, it will work for wild food. The only time it can fail is if it's an ingredient that doesn't really work flavor-wise with the method that you are using. A good example would be this one. So this is my black mustard leaves, brassica. They work fantastic for fermentation. So those are lacto-fermented leaves. Try the same thing with stinging nettle. It is the most disgusting thing in the world. It smells and tastes, and I will tell you how I know it, smells and tastes exactly like cow shit.
Okay.
And I know that because, you know, I grew up in a small town in Belgium, and when we were a kid, we always running in the field, and one of us always fell down head first in the cow pie, and that was me. So I know the taste too.
I grew up with cows and milking them and stuff, and had my milking cows, and tail comes up all over you.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I remember, like the first time I tried and I opened it, I went, you know, immediately, you know. So everything was right. The fermentation was right. Everything was right. It just doesn't work with nettle.
Yeah.
If you were, you know, let's go back to our cattail. If you do 100% cattail fermentation, it will work. But I have to tell you, it's not fantastic. It's like slimy, like snail juice, you know. It's like a booger ferment. Yeah.
All right, she corrected his name.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay. There is so many people, and you know what? I'm kind of a loner a little bit. Like I don't follow that many people. And I heard the name. Just so you know, I did hear the name, but I'm not following the guy. And I never watch YouTube. I'm completely, you know, I started doing that on purpose many years ago to just be on my own and really do. I wanted to do a lot of original content. So I started to really go deep into very deep research into old method and you know, looking at prehistory and all this stuff. And I kind of became like a lone wolf a little bit on foraging, but on purpose a little bit, just because so many people on the foraging field kind of like borrow from each other. And if I write books and all that, I try to be original as much as possible. So I tend to go like that. And I'm sure the guy does a fantastic job. I'll take a look at him I heard the name, so I know it's definitely somebody. Correct, mesquite powder, yeah, all this good stuff. You know. Question: do I grow a garden? Yes and no. Yes and no. If you're serious about foraging, you're gonna be planting stuff. Why? Because I think it's fantastic to be lazy, and lazy is survival. Why do you need to go walking for 5 miles when you can plant the same plant here? So what I do is I like to go collect, for example, next week I'm going to be collecting a bunch of thistle sage seeds. It's a fascinating seed, a native plant. It's 5 times the size of chia, has the same nutritional value as chia, but next year I don't want to go that far. And it's a native plant. I live on 60 acres of land here. It's not my land, but I live there. I'm going to be planting it here because I can. So that's my garden. Yeah.
And I just drove an hour and a half to pick up hazelnut trees because I couldn't find them around here, and I want to be able to grow hazelnut. And it's it's native here, so why not grow it in my yard? So I went an hour and a half to get some hazelnut trees. Same thing, once you get into it, you really do want it handy. You want it by your back door.
I'm gonna tell you an interesting story based on my book about seeds and grains. And after I wrote that book, I really realized that the history of foraging and agriculture is complete bullshit. Seriously, it is complete bullshit. Because they always say, "Oh, we were foraging and then we went farming and that was it." And I'm going to give you a good example because when I was working on the book about seeds and grain, I was always fascinated about finding what my ancestor ate, because there is no record on it. I'm from Europe. I'm from Belgium, but my ancestor will have come mostly my DNA is 70% Nordic. So we go toward Germany, Nordic countries, Scandinavia, stuff like that. That would be kind of my DNA coming from there. And there is no record on what those people will have eaten 2,000 or 4,000 years ago, like the Neolithic time. I was fascinated by the Neolithic time. But there is nothing. So the Roman came in, they basically destroy all the different tribes, they destroy all the tradition, there was no written history of it. And I was really wondering I was doing a lot of research into prehistoric find and any caches, anything that were found in clay pots and stuff. And then one day I was watching a documentary about pickle bodies, speaking about rebel canner and rebel fermenter. What about pickle bodies? You go, what the hell are pickle bodies? They call bug bodies. So bug bodies in Europe were people who were sacrificed in the Neolithic time, and swamps were considered a sacred place. So they were actually buried in the swamp.
Right in the peat bog.
That's right. So if you think about it, a swamp is really a giant sauerkraut or a giant kimchi, because there is no moving water, and all the plants that are inside, including cattle and all this stuff, they basically start fermenting. So the water and the ground is super acidic. So if you put a body inside, it will, even 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, sometimes you find them and it looks like they were killed yesterday, type of thing. So that was crazy.
Like they're canned,
Yeah. So I became fascinated, and I literally started calling the museum in Denmark where those bodies were preserved. And they gave me all the information because the scientists started to look at the stomach content and did complete analysis of it. Well, guess what they were eating? They were eating porridge most of the time. So I'm like, boom, this is my gold mine. I'm working on seeds and grain. Let's see what they ate. So Neolithic time, people were already farming. So they were already farming, and they had barley and all kind of different stuff. But then you take a look at the porridge they were eating, and the average ratio was approximately 50% farm grain and 50% forage grains and seeds.
Yes.
No, we're not talking about only a few forage grains and seeds. One of the porridge had up to 70 of them.
Yeah. I
So
can't think of the
yeah,
name
go
of
for it.
the Neolithic guy, but he was killed with a spear, and they found him frozen
Yeah.
on a mountainside, and inside
So
his
there
stomach
was another
contents
guy.
was
Yeah,
all porridge, and like you said, there was a little bit of barley, and I don't think it was even
right.
25%, and the rest was all wild grain that
Yeah,
he had made into a porridge, and that's what he'd had the day before he died.
yeah. And you know why that was? Because our ancestors figured out that if they were living on a diet of only 1 grain or 2 grains, like we live in modern time, you're not getting the nutrition that you need.
Right.
So, I mean, you go to the store and you buy a white bread, you may as well buy nothing. There is no nutritional value in a regular white bread, which is what so many people have problem with. You know, they say we're gluten-free, we're gluten intolerant and all this stuff. It's just, you get no nutrition anymore.
Yeah.
Well, our gut, the flora in our gut is the
Yeah.
number one microorganism that is going extinct. It is
But
going extinct faster than any other microorganism on the planet. And that's
yeah,
because our diets have changed so radically, and what we were designed to eat and digest, we're not eating anymore. And so
but
we're literally killing our microbiome in our gut.
yeah.
It's literally going extinct.
So if you go back to the history of agriculture, you know, there was no such a thing as going from foraging to agriculture all at once. You know, our ancestors never stopped foraging.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
and if you take a look at those porridge, they never stopped foraging. They knew that they only using the you know, the seeds that they were growing, or the grain they were growing was not enough. You know,
But
so
even when they were farming, like until like 50 years ago, look at hedgerows.
yeah,
They knew the importance of hedgerows. Hedgerows weren't just for a windbreak. They weren't just for pollinators.
right,
All of those plants, if you walk a hedgerow anywhere that's still established, it's all full of edible plants
yeah, I agree.
that supplements what they were growing in that field. It doesn't matter what they were growing in that field. It would supplement and be a complementary protein to
Yeah,
what they were growing in that field. Like mulberry is like high protein for a berry.
yeah,
And you put
yeah,
that with something else and it makes a complete protein in your diet.
yeah. And you know what's interesting? Do you know how many grains and seeds I can forage here in California? Just give me a number.
Probably thousands. I think a
No,
thousand.
that way too much. That was way too much. Like,
Really?
yeah, I can collect locally. I can collect 120 different edible seeds and grains, and I assume that I can collect probably 240. 240. Guess how many of those seeds are available at the store?
10.
Seeds and grains. 0, not 1, nothing, nada. And I give you even the best example, chia. You can buy chia at the store.
Mhm.
We
Right.
have our native chia locally. We have literally thousands of acres of chia in the desert. I mean, it's everywhere.
Mhm.
That's not the one that you're going to buy at the store.
No,
You know,
it's imported
yeah.
from wherever. What
It's all
about
about-
like not even flax?
We don't have flax locally. That's not, the flax is actually from Europe, and we don't have it as an invasive plant locally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But flax was a big deal in our ancestor diet, like the wild flax, when you look at the bog bodies, for sure, you know. But, you know, a good example would be all the wild oats. You know, I show you the grain right there. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a small amount. I mean, I literally could survive. I just need to find, you know, at the end of the world come, I just need to find a Vitamix in the wild, and then I'll be okay.
The Vitamix.
It's interesting what you
Might
were
have to be
saying there.
crunching that with some rocks. But...
What you're saying there was kind of interesting. My grandmother was born in 1899
Right.
up by Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She had one sister and 12 brothers.
Right.
And they had a little ranch up there. And I didn't put together the story she was telling me when I was a pre-teenager.
Right.
And her aunt were telling me about going out picking berries and
Right.
all of the stuff they'd go out and gather while the brothers were working the fields
Right.
for hunting.
Yeah.
And it's just like you just click here, like, oh, they were foraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so part of the family is growing, farming, and the other part of the family is hunting, and the other part of the family is foraging.
Yeah, exactly. And that create you basically get all your nutrition that way. You don't get like yeah. And our ancestors knew that.
Our ancestors weren't doing either or. They were doing and this and that and that.
Yeah.
They were doing all of them in season.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
let me look at the question there. Wild oats, So wild oats, I really like the fact that I found a solution, because that was a pain in the butt trying to extract that grain. But it's. I mean, I know Vitamix can be expensive. I've never done. I assume it can work as a different food processor too. But I got to tell you, like, this is game changer. It's literally like in terms of survival. And guess what? I can totally connect my. I've done that when I go foraging on location with classes. I connect my Vitamix to battery and solar.
Mm-hmm.
So I can totally do it. But there are many traditional methods that exist, and exactly. I have exactly the same thing. Yeah.
My best friend.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to bring up websites here.
Yeah.
All right. So this is Amazon. This is his 5 books that are listed on Amazon. So the first one here is the Wildcraft Seeds and Grains. You can get it both in paperback or Kindle version. Then there is the Vinegars, which also includes hot sauces, soups, salad dressings, pastas, mustards. Yeah. Another good one, both in paperback and Kindle. Fermentation.
Yeah, that's a good one. The fermentation is definitely one of the best seller, and the biggest bestseller, of course, is the alcoholic fermentation, the beer and the wine and all that stuff.
Which is the next one.
Yeah. I know this one, like, people, I really like that one. But the seeds and grains.
Yeah, the last one here is the come on, quit jumping. There we go. You have to move just there we go. Is the Wildcraft Cuisine.
That's a crazy book in a good way. That's a completely crazy book in a good way. I look back at it and say, I can't believe my publisher let me do this. That was at the time, this book was like, oh my God, like trying to make the beer. Like all the books that I've made after that come from that book. And I went into more details, and I kind of became a professional at it. And this one is really the introduction to all this. So some of the recipe could be improved, but we did a new edition of it. My publisher said, do you want to change anything? I go like, no, it's perfect the way it is. It's good for people who want to get their feet wet and go from there. Yeah.
I got 2 more things. So I got the this is his hang on, let me go copy that. I'm going to drop that in the link here. I mean, in the chat. That's his website. And it's got, you got books, you got the gallery, you got contact, classes and workshops coming up, cuisine, wild clay pots and pottery. And then the other one here was covers it as well, that has goes into some skills and stuff. So these are his, so you can check those out and get more information there. And
well, we can talk about the other thing. Go for it. Well, there's the foraging, but also what I did is I became obsessed with the land, and I started to research like how can I actually use the land and the ground and the clay itself to actually create my own ferment and all this stuff. So I basically teach myself how to forage wild clay. And at this point, I'm actually using a lot of my own vessel. And I'm kind of an artist, so I look funky, like kind of like crazy. But this is a good example of a clay that I collect in the wild. And then I did my own amphora. It's a kind of amphora. And I make wine in this stuff. So I totally make wine, and actually I use prehistoric method where I make it food safe using beeswax. And here's a good example of a wine that is aging in beeswax right there. So this is a elderberry wine and blackberry wine. And then what I do is I do old method. I actually bury them in the forest, in the mountain, 3 feet down, and I forget about it for a couple of years, and I go back and taste it. So I do all kinds of crazy stuff. This is a good example right there. This is how I make my own mead, and it's a vessel. I make mead every week for my classes, like a very small amount of alcohol, like maybe 3% alcohol. And I can see the cat is super interested over there. And this is another one right there where it's kind of like a prehistoric. It's kind of like you can put pressure by doing a little bowl on it, and you can actually have kind of like a what you call like effervescent, like bubbles, kind of like a real beer, you know. So I do my own pots. I do my own teapots. I do my own, you know, just. I'm trying to move away from anything that's plastic and even glass at this point, and I try to go back to the way it used to be done like 2,000 years ago, using clay that I foraged locally. My clay is collected like a mile away. I found like different sources of clay in the desert, and I like this child Zuber. I'm gonna check him out. He makes his own pottery clay. There you go. It's probably my long lost brother. He looks like. I'm gonna go check him out. But it's fascinating, like the possibility that exists by, and I think it's so cool to be able to forage stuff and then serving the plant in the same place that they came from. It's kind of like a full circle. So yeah, that's super interesting. It's just kind of like a new thing. And then the next book that I'm working on right now, it's a book about tea. All the different flavor that you can plan to make non-alcoholic beverage, not just tea, but non-alcoholic using plant. So I'm spending years on it. I just started, but I'm gonna be using like fermentation, all the same process you used to make in tea, oxidation, fermentation. Fascinating. There's a lot of plants we don't do anything with locally. I'll give you a good example. We have a lot of wild oats again, or you can use the grain. But if you go online, you can actually buy oats straw tea, and that's goddamn expensive. So you can totally do the same thing with any wild oats if you wanted to. You know, you can do that with wild barley. By the way, you can go online and buy barley tea. Or, you know, why not doing it with the wild barley? You know, so I'm kind of like going back to all this stuff and going like, oh my God, there's like so much stuff. So every time you pick up a subject like that, it's kind of like you looking at the land in a brand new perspective, a brand new viewpoint. It just never stops. You know, so you're going to notice things that you've never seen before because you never look at that perspective. So it just goes on and on and on and on. It's amazing. Anyhow.
Well, I've just discovered I've been doing this wrong, so I'm gonna have to do that and bury it for a couple of years, and then I'll check it out.
But you know, I have wine that I did that in 2016, and it was bottles, like not in clay. And then there was a big fire, and I had a stick that I put there to let me know where it was, and everything burned off. So I still have bottle from 2016 buried somewhere, and I can never find them again. So one
Did
day
they
an
have a metal
archaeologist.
lid? Maybe we could I'll get out my metal detector. Maybe we can find the lid if they had a metal lid.
Oh, I use beeswax too for
Oh,
those.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh,
So, but also lacto fermentation. I mean, you can make your own crock, for example, and you can totally do your own fermentation. I mean, I've used this kind of vessel to do lacto fermentation anyway. You know. So I don't know. It gives you a lot of freedom. It is so much fun. I think it's. I love my life. You know, I love my life. I can spend my life outdoor, and I keep learning and learning and learning and learning, and it's kind of like my passion. And whenever I learn something, I try to share it with other people. And I do a lot of failure. I mean, somebody was asking, do you have failure? My God, yeah. I mean, like when I was learning to do pottery, I did all the failure you can think of, but bit by bit, you learn how to do it right. And it's fascinating to learn all those methods that people used to use for food safety in prehistoric time. How do you keep water? How do you, how can you ferment stuff in a clay pot? What can you use to make them waterproof? So fascinating stuff that is still relevant today. If something will happen, you can totally become 100% independent. And those are pit fires, so it's fire like really primitive outside in a regular fire, but you can totally make those waterproof. So I even ferment them. I can put an airlock on top, and I even created my own airlock made of clay. So I don't need anything, but I ferment a wine or beer in one of those bottles at this point.
Oh, wow.
I know, it's so cool. It's so cool.
No, you're one of my tribe. I'm kind of doing this stuff too. Some of it, not all of it.
But
some of it I
different.
see you post, and then I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that? I got to try that.
And that's why I'm saying, like, that's why I don't follow that many people, because we all have our own personality. So we all, if you really do what you love, you're going to be original, meaning that you're going to come up with your own stuff. Once I've done a book, then I'm going to start looking at what other people have done, with wine and all this stuff. But most of the research is really archaeology and talking to scientists and really deep research in fermentation and how it works, and it's fun. I like doing research. I love doing research.
All right, we're coming up on the hour mark here.
Wait.
I love having a hobby I can eat.
Yeah. Somebody asked you test the clay for lead. Yes, but at this point, I'm really thinking you don't need to. And I get, people are freaking out a little bit about pottery and lead. Is because in the old days, people used to make glaze using lead. So that has given a really bad name to pottery. And a lot of people get upset at this point, going like, "Was there any lead in the clay?" The chance of getting lead in the clay are really, really minimal, unless you go collect your clay on a shooting range. Then you may get lead, maybe.
Most of the lead in pots and stuff was from the glazing.
Yeah,
doing the different colors and stuff, mixing in on the glazing.
And they don't do that anymore. I mean, they're not supposed to do that. Sometimes you still get some clay, I think, from South America, different places where they use still lead and it go through, but it's not done anymore locally. And if you use a modern glaze anyway, I gotta tell you, I mean, I do glaze stuff too, and I do my own glaze using ashes and rocks. You can take rocks that contain a lot of silica, and you can grind them and use that to make glaze. So even if there was lead in the clay, it will not go through if you have a glaze anyway. So I used to do it, and if I was using it for a restaurant or for other people, I will do it. But otherwise, I can't. It's not an issue. It really isn't an issue. Anyway.
Yeah, my cough is coming back. So let me wrap this up. Let me wrap this up tonight.
Yeah.
All right. So coming up for the rest of the week here, other live streams on my other channel, Gray Man Prepping. Tomorrow night is on Tactical Tuesday is Are You Romancing Disasters? Thursday night is a midnight ride with Gray Man Prepping. Friday, back here on Camppatton Family Compound, is Biomass for the Homestead. Saturday on Gray Man Prepping is for Survival Saturdays. What are your plans after the event? And it's a one suggested by one of the viewers. And then next Monday here, the topic is making and preserving gravies. So that's what we'll be talking about next Monday here.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. So with that, everyone, if you're not subscribed to Tammy, please subscribe to Tammy. Go check out Pascal's website and check out his books. And we will see you. Hopefully, I will see you tomorrow night for Tactical Tuesday. All right, everyone. Take care, and we will see you around.